A month after my breakup, I accidentally saw my sister with my ex at a restaurant. She was handing him money. A month after my breakup, I was finally moving on when I stumbled upon my sister handing money to my ex-fiancé, the man who shattered my heart. My heart pounded. Were they together? Was she betraying me? The truth was worse than I ever imagined. I met Richard a year ago at a charity event that my family's foundation was hosting. It was one of those large, elegant evenings where people dressed in designer clothes and sipped champagne while discussing business and social issues they barely understood. I had grown used to these events, even if they weren't really my scene. My parents always used them as a way to introduce me to suitable men, the kind of men with Ivy League degrees, old money, and last names that made headlines. But Richard wasn't like any of them. He stood out the moment I saw him. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, didn't name drop or pretend to know things he didn't. He told me he worked as a graphic designer and spoke about his work with such passion that I was instantly drawn in. He made me laugh until my sides hurt. And when the event ended, I found myself not wanting to say goodbye. After that night, we started seeing each other. Coffee dates turned into dinners, which turned into weekends together. He was thoughtful, creative, and surprisingly down to earth. Within a year, he proposed to me on a quiet Sunday afternoon while we were walking in the park. He didn't make a grand spectacle out of it, just pulled out a simple ring and asked with a shaky smile, "Will you marry me?" I said yes without a second thought. When I told my mother, her reaction wasn't what I expected. Her normally composed face shifted with concern. "Are you sure about him, Amber?" she asked carefully. "You barely know his background." I didn't hesitate. "I know everything I need to know, Mom. He's the one." To my surprise, it was my father, always the most critical and exacting person in my life, who seemed to approve right away. After dinner one evening, as Richard helped my mom clear the table, my dad leaned over to me and said quietly, "He's got character. That's worth more than any trust fund or family name." Even my mother began to soften toward him after that. The only one who didn't fall under Richard's spell right away was my older sister, Jessica. She was more cautious, more observant. A few weeks after we got engaged, she pulled me aside when Richard wasn't around. "Just be careful," she said in a low voice. "He's charming, but looks can be deceiving, you know?" I rolled my eyes. I thought she was just being jealous. After all, I was only 27 and getting married before her. She'd never had a serious relationship that lasted more than a few months. "He makes me happy, Jess," I said firmly. "Can't that be enough for you?" Eventually, even Jessica came around. By the time we sent out the wedding invitations, it felt like my whole family adored him. They practically worshipped him, especially my father, who would invite him to golf or call just to chat. Then, about a month before the wedding, everything changed. I was on my way downtown for a hair appointment when I spotted Richard's car parked outside a small cafe. It caught my eye because he'd told me he had a client meeting across town that morning. I wasn't suspicious at first until I glanced through the cafe window. There he was, Richard, sitting across from a woman I didn't recognize. She had long, dark hair and was leaning close to him, laughing. Then, right in front of everyone, he reached across the table and kissed her. My hand started shaking as I pulled over and parked across the street. I told myself I might be mistaken. Maybe it was someone who looked like him. Maybe it wasn't a kiss. Maybe it was just a moment taken out of context. But I knew better. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching them. They laughed, touched, hands, and kissed again. Not in a way that friends or coworkers do, but like lovers do. Eventually, they stood up and left together, walking down the street side by side. I canceled my hair appointment. I couldn't focus on anything. I drove home in a daze, the same question looping in my mind. Why? That evening, when Richard came over, I couldn't look at him. I couldn't fake a smile or pretend everything was okay. He noticed right away. "You've been quiet all evening," he said gently, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "Wedding jitters getting to you?" I pulled away from his touch. I had spent the whole afternoon rehearsing what I would say. But now, sitting across from him, the words felt heavy in my mouth. "We need to talk," I said. He gave a nervous laugh. "That sounds ominous." "I don't think we should get married," I said, keeping my voice steady. Flat, emotionless. His smile vanished. His eyes darted around the room. "What are you talking about? Is this a joke?" I shook my head. I reached for my engagement ring, twisted it off, and placed it on the coffee table between us. I don't think we're right for each other anymore." "Amber, this is crazy," he said, his voice rising slightly. But I had already made up my mind. I didn't tell him what I saw. I didn't need to. The man I thought I was going to marry wasn't the man I thought I knew. "Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Just talk to me," Richard pleaded, stepping toward me with desperation in his voice. I shook my head slowly. "I've made up my mind. I can't do this." His brows pulled together in disbelief. "Is there someone else?" he demanded, his voice rising with emotion. "Is that what this is about?" The irony of his words made my chest tighten. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him what I'd seen. The kiss in the cafe, the way he held her hand, the way they laughed like they didn't have a care in the world. But I held it all back. If my father ever found out Richard had cheated on me, he wouldn't just be angry, he'd destroy him. And even after what Richard had done, I couldn't bear the thought of causing that kind of storm. "There's no one else," I said quietly. "We're just done." Richard stared at me in shock, his eyes filled with tears that looked so real, so raw. I almost doubted myself. Almost. I don't believe you, he whispered, voice cracking. I love you, Amber. Please don't do this. It's over, Richard, I said firmly. Leave. Now. He stood there for a moment longer, as if hoping I'd take it back, but I didn't. Slowly, he turned and walked out the door, taking the last year of my life with him. That was it. Afterward, my family was stunned. The suddenness of it all left them with questions they couldn't answer. My mother cornered me in the kitchen the next day. Amber, what happened? You were so happy. I simply shook my head. It just wasn't right anymore. Even Jessica didn't press me. I think she sensed there was more to the story, but she didn't push. I chose to keep the truth to myself and bury it deep inside. Richard's betrayal still choked me every time I thought about it, but I refused to let it define me. He wasn't worth my tears. For the next month, I threw myself into work. I skipped family dinners, avoided calls I didn't feel like answering, and stayed away from any place that reminded me of him. I didn't want to be asked questions. I didn't want to give answers. My father, ever the quiet observer, called me every day. He didn't ask for details, at least not directly, but his concern was obvious. Richard came by the office yesterday, he said one afternoon. He looked terrible, sweetheart. Are you sure there's nothing to salvage? I'm sure, Dad, I replied, keeping my voice steady. Please don't bring him up again. And that was the end of it. At least on the surface. I still hadn't told anyone what really happened. Not my parents. Not even Jessica. As far as they knew, Richard and I had simply drifted apart. People fall out of love, don't they? It was believable. It was easier that way. I told myself I'd start dating again when I was ready. Life would move forward. And eventually, Richard would become just another name in the chapters of my past. Then came that Tuesday afternoon. I had taken the day off after a particularly long work week. I decided to treat myself to lunch at a little Italian place I used to love, a cozy restaurant tucked away on a quiet street. It had been our spot once, and I had avoided it since the breakup, but something in me wanted to reclaim it. I walked in and was waiting for my table when I glanced through the large front window. That's when I saw them, Jessica and Richard. They were sitting in a corner booth, heads bent close together. My stomach flipped. My first thought, the one that hit me like a slap, was that they were dating. I couldn't breathe. Betrayal surged through me so fast I felt dizzy. My own sister? But then something strange happened. Jessica reached into a leather bag and unzipped it. From where I stood, I could see it was stuffed with bundles of cash. She slid it across the table to Richard, who took it with a silent nod. I didn't think. I didn't pause. I pushed through the door and stormed into the restaurant, heart pounding in my chest. They didn't see me at first. I was almost at their table when I heard Jessica say, "This is from me and my father, as promised." "What the hell is going on here?" I said, loud enough that the nearby tables fell quiet. Jessica's head snapped around. Her eyes widened in pure shock. "Amber, what are you?" Richard grabbed the bag and stood up so fast he nearly knocked over his water glass. He clutched the bag like it was some kind of lifeline. "I should go," he said, already turning. "You're not going anywhere until someone explains what this is," I said, stepping in front of him, blocking his path. The whole restaurant had gone still. Conversations had paused, and there I was, standing in front of the man who had broken my heart, and the sister I had trusted more than anyone else. I didn't know what I was about to hear, but I knew. Whatever it was, it would change everything. Richard's eyes darted between Jessica and me, panic written all over his face. Then without a word, he shoved past me. His shoulder hit mine so hard that I stumbled back a step, nearly falling into a chair. "Richard!" Jessica called after him, but he didn't stop. He weaved quickly between the tables, head down, clutching the leather bag like it was glued to his chest. In seconds, he was out the door, leaving behind a silence that settled over the small restaurant like a heavy fog. I turned to Jessica, heart pounding, anger and confusion twisting inside me. "Are you kidding me right now, Jess? You're giving money to my ex? Behind my back? What the hell is going on?" Jessica's expression tightened. Her jaw clenched, and the softness in her eyes vanished. "You don't understand anything, Amber." "Then enlighten me," I snapped, "because from where I'm standing, it looks like you and Dad have been throwing money at the guy who broke my heart." She crossed her arms, her face flushed with heat. "We know why you really left Richard. Dad and I have been trying to help him. He's been going through something serious, and clearly you don't care." I stared at her, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "What are you even talking about?" Jessica took a deep breath, her voice lowering as she said, "His cancer, Amber. The man has stage 3 lymphoma, and you dumped him because you couldn't handle it. How could you be so selfish?" My breath caught in my chest. The words didn't even make sense at first. The floor beneath me felt like it shifted. "Cancer?" I said slowly. "Richard doesn't have cancer." Jessica blinked at me, her arms still crossed but her confidence beginning to falter. "What? Of course he does. He told Dad everything right after you broke up with him. He said he tried to tell you about his diagnosis and you panicked. He said that's why you ended things so suddenly." I let out a harsh, bitter laugh that surprised even me. "Is that what he told you?" Jessica's mouth opened slightly, but she didn't answer. Doubt flickered in her eyes for the first time. I sat down heavily in the chair Richard had vacated, feeling my legs go weak. "I didn't leave Richard because I couldn't handle a diagnosis," I said flatly. "I left him because I saw him cheating on me, with my own eyes, a month before. the wedding. I saw him kissing another woman. They were sitting together in a cafe like they didn't have a care in the world. I watched them for 20 minutes, laughing, touching, kissing. Jessica's eyes widened. No, that can't be. He said he was scared to tell you, that you didn't want to deal with it. There is no cancer, Jess, I said, my voice steady now. There is no treatment, no diagnosis. He's been lying to you, to Dad. He's conning both of you. Jessica didn't speak for a moment. Her face turned pale. Slowly, she sat down across from me. Oh my God, she whispered. We need to call Dad. Now. She fumbled for her phone with trembling hands and quickly dialed. Dad answered on the first ring, his voice warm and cheerful. Hey, sweetheart, he said. Everything okay? Jessica put the phone on speaker. Dad, it's me. Amber's here too. You need to listen to what she has to say. It's important. I took a deep breath. Dad, I didn't tell you the real reason I ended things with Richard. I didn't want to make a scene, and I didn't want you to go after him. I know how much you liked him, and I just wanted to walk away quietly. But I caught him cheating. I saw him with another woman. That's why I ended the engagement. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Dad finally spoke, his voice was quieter. Hurt, even. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have asked you. I should have talked to you before. I got involved. But when Richard told me about the cancer, about how you left him during the worst time of his life, I just couldn't believe it. It didn't sound like you, but he seemed so broken. My stomach twisted. How much have you given him, Dad? There was a pause. 50,000 so far. Today was another 20. I looked over at Jessica. She had gone completely still, then raised both hands to her face and covered it. I can't believe we fell for it, she said quietly. Dad's voice hardened. I'm calling the police. That money was withdrawn in cash, but if we act quickly, we're coming to your office, I cut in. We need to figure this out together. Okay, Dad said. I'll be waiting. Jessica ended the call. The two of us sat there in silence for a moment, the truth hanging between us like thick fog. I could see the guilt in her face, the way it settled in her eyes, heavy and painful. I'm sorry, she said finally. I didn't know. I thought I was helping him. Helping you. I nodded slowly. It's not your fault. He knew exactly what he was doing. Jessica and I were halfway to our father's office when my phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down and saw his name glowing on the screen. I answered immediately. Dad, we're almost there. Richard just got into an accident. He cut in quickly. His voice was rushed, tight with urgency. The police were already chasing him. Apparently, I wasn't his only victim. He lost control of his car, trying to outrun them on the highway. I felt my stomach twist. Is he? I couldn't even finish the question. He's alive, Dad said, but in custody. They found the money in his car, all of it. An officer just called me. They'll be returning it once everything is processed. My hand dropped slowly to my lap as I ended the call. For a moment, I just stared out the window, watching the buildings and trees pass by in a blur. I couldn't speak. I wasn't sure what to feel. Jessica said nothing either. We just sat there in silence, both of us trying to process the weight of everything that had just happened. After a minute or two, she reached over and gently squeezed my hand. Her voice was soft when she spoke. I'm sorry I believed him. Over you. I turned to her and squeezed her hand back. It's not your fault, I said. He fooled all of us. Jessica shook her head. Not you, she said. You saw through him. I looked down, my thoughts drifting back to the months I had spent building a life with Richard. Or at least trying to. The dress fittings, the calls to caterers, the endless discussions about venues, the way we used to stay up late talking about the future, about the children we'd raise, the old age we'd grow into together. All of it had been a lie. I let out a slow breath. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't seen him that day, I said quietly. We'd be married now. Jessica nodded, her face solemn. You dodged more than a bullet, Amber, she said. You dodged a missile. I smiled faintly, the weight of her words settling in my chest. She was right. I had come so close to tying my life to someone who didn't deserve even a second of it. If I hadn't seen him at that cafe, if I had trusted his smile a little longer, I would have walked straight into a life built on lies. And I never would have known. As we pulled into the parking lot of Dad's office building, I felt something shift inside me, something I hadn't felt in weeks. Lightness. Not happiness, not yet, but a release. Like the heavy coat of confusion and pain I had been wearing had finally started to slip off my shoulders. Richard had taken so much from me. My trust, my time, my confidence. But as I looked at the familiar building where Dad had spent decades building his business, I realized something important. He hadn't taken everything. Standing there with my sister, and knowing our father was waiting inside, ready to face this together, reminded me of what still mattered, what always had. The love of my family, flawed and complicated as it could be, was still intact, still strong, stronger than any lie Richard had tried to weave into our lives. You know what? I said, turning to Jessica as we stepped out of the car. For the first time in weeks, I felt the corners of my mouth lift into a real smile. I think it's time for us all to have lunch at a new restaurant. Jessica looked surprised. Then she smiled too. Yeah? She asked, her tone light again. I'm ready to make some better memories, I said. Jessica linked her arm through mine and gave me a little tug forward. Lead the way, she said warmly. Some stories deserve better endings. I nodded. She was right. And as we walked toward the building, arm in arm, I realized this was the beginning of mine.